Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here with you this evening. I'm Pauline Wiles, and I just love talking about author websites. So I hope we'll have a fun discussion together. It's a pretty small group. So although I will mainly present some visuals and I'll ask you to take part in the chat window, if you need to interrupt me, do. And of course, I'll leave time for a discussion at the end. I'm one of those people with the COVID cough, so apologies if I need to take a drink of tea or even a cough drop. And I do have another monitor to the side here, so I'm going to organize my windows now. You will see me looking over to that side from time to time, but I admit I'm not actually very good at noticing the chat while I'm talking. So yeah, just know that you would probably have to
I can help you
interrupt
keep an
me.
eye on that.
Yeah, so if you want my attention, definitely just interrupt me. And in particular, if you're not seeing something that looks like slides and visuals, then this would be a really good time to shout. All righty, so websites, your online home, that's why we're here. Okay, so assuming you're all in the same time zone, what we'll cover this evening: what makes a great website, either as an author or someone who has a business serving authors, and what happens when you get it right. If you don't yet have a website, when is it time to make one? In fact, I will pause before long and ask where you're all at with that. Lots of people feel really overwhelmed by technology. So I am here to be your kind of guardian angel and say, please don't worry so much about technology. Things are getting so much easier. Before you leave here this evening, I do want you to be clear on one key decision about your website. If you do nothing else as a result of our time together, this will be well worth your price of admission. Design angles. So yeah, I love that you've got a session coming up on book design quite soon. What does it look like in terms of website design? How do you keep things looking fresh and contemporary? And just in case you're not made of money, how do you go about getting the most from a tight website budget? All right, so that's what's coming. These are my contact details. If by any chance we run out of time this evening, or you think of something in the shower tomorrow that you want to ask me, this is my information. I'm very happy to hear from you. So even though we said that I work with BAPA in the San Francisco Bay Area of California, yeah, you can tell my accent isn't from actually around there. I moved from London to San Francisco with my husband about 18 years ago. And the only reason I mention that is I was kind of homesick when we first moved, and I started writing light romantic comedy, I think, as a form of therapy. And that is how I got started on independent publishing. I published one novel. Surprisingly, it was very popular. I got bitten by the bug, and you know how these things go. One book turned into six. And although my day jobs were in marketing and tech and entrepreneurship, I was very happy with my side gig as an author for a while, until I started to notice that the days when I was most excited to get out of bed were the days when I needed to update my website or work on my email marketing. In other words, do all those things that a lot of authors actually hate. So that was the light bulb that went off for me. And these days I'm a full-time website designer, and I do specialize in helping other authors. So let me pause. Go ahead, put in the chat for me if you wouldn't mind. Do you already have a website for either your books or the business that you've got that supports authors? I just want to get a sense of where we are in the room together, because I might skip a whole section if I see a lot of yeses coming in the chat. Colin, yes. Lauren, yes. Julie, okay. All right. For your publishing biz, Jennifer, yes. Caroline, not yet. Okay. Okay. Yeah, but it's always under construction. Oh, that's completely the truth, Paul. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So most of you are saying you do have a website. I will tailor what I say a little bit accordingly. And for anyone, whether you do have a site already or you don't, I think it's worth just acknowledging what does a great website do for you. So when you get your website right, Number one, it connects you strongly with your ideal reader. So if you have a service business helping authors, then you can substitute your ideal client in here. But generally speaking, a website is a really strong signal to somebody who will enjoy your book that they are in the right place. Your website needs to show that you're professional and serious. Now, you could say that books and websites are actually different things. They're different communication media, but they are closely related. So frankly, I think if your website is rubbish, then your readers are going to assume that your work might not be much good either. So having a website is, I think, a very important step to show credibility. So here we go. It implies that your work is strong. So when authors come to me with a good collection of books and strong book covers, it makes website design so much easier because we can, of course, make that visual link between the book and the website immediately. And if you miss the mark on your website, or it's 10 years since you made updates to your website, then your reader might start to wonder whether you really know what you're doing in this field of communication. Your website should not just look beautiful. Although, frankly, I'm a big fan that if it can look beautiful, then it should. We want your reader or your website visitor to take some kind of action. So I will come back to that and talk in more detail later on. But we definitely want the website visitor to do something. Your website might get you found on Google. This is a whole separate topic. I think it's very relevant to non-fiction authors. For fiction authors, I would say this might not be where you want to be awake at 3 o'clock in the morning worrying. So that's a maybe. However, whatever kind of author you are, whatever kind of service business you might have to support publishing, your website these days does serve as the home base for your marketing. So these are all some things that happen when you've got a strong website and you get it right. Why is it important? I can't even take a sip of tea before you've read that slide and you've decided what your first impression is. So it's the same with your website. I am going to whiz through this section. This talks about when is it time to get a website and why is it a good idea. Most of you are already there, and if you're not there, then the fact that you've shown up this evening suggests to me that you think a website might be important. So I am going to hop over that. What gets in your way then? For those of you who have a website, but you kindly decided to show up and see what I have to say, or for those of you who don't yet have a website, what is on your mind and what's worrying you? I'll look to the chat in a moment for your input, but some of the things I hear on this topic include the content that goes on there. You heard that like blogging was your golden bullet, but that didn't really work for you. You hate technology, or you don't have design skills to make it look good. So go ahead, hop into the chat if you wouldn't mind. Let's just share some input from you on, of all the things that might be worrying you about your website, what's top of mind? Karaoke, does it look good on a phone? Thank you. Thank you for being first to share. Too much content. Yeah, Colin, that can be a thing. Is the content really connecting with people? Paul says. Yeah, Lauren, you're worried about keeping up to date. Security, and yes, SEO, so getting found by Google search engine stuff. Oh, okay, and then even some technology that was powering your website has died. All right, yeah. Okay, so these are all things that I hear quite a bit. Let's take a look at some of them. In terms of not being sure what goes on there, or Colin, you said you've got too much content, and others mentioned how do you simplify it and connect with people. So I believe that you don't actually need much more than about 5 key pages on your website. This is mainly tailored for you who are writing books and publishing books, but I've put down here also that if you're offering services instead, then you can make that translation. So yes, you want the homepage. Yes, you want some information about your work, whether that's books that you've written or your author services. Something about you, almost certainly, and particularly if you are offering services to others. Yep, definitely a way to contact you. And maybe something about news, latest releases, events, anything else that you want to share. And that might or might not take the form of a blog. So especially for anyone on the call who doesn't yet have a website, please don't think you have to create some gigantic beast of a thing. It really can be quite minimal, at least at first. My website is bigger, but I got there over a number of years. So this is Debbie's website, a client of mine, and I include this precisely because she has got these 5 key pages. So when I first worked with her, she had just 1 book published. She does now have 3, but in any case, she's got a homepage, an about page, books, news, and a way of contacting her. And as long as you keep it sleek and simple, then nobody's going to judge you if your website really is bare bones in this sense. So none of you mentioned blogging as a particular worry, but we did hear about some search engine concerns. This is a study from Penguin Random House a few years ago. And to put it in context, I think, they don't specify, but I think this is probably addressed at fiction readers. So if you are writing fiction, then they found that Goodreads was in fact the top method for people discovering books. And being found by blogs and search engines didn't even get onto the chart here. Now, for nonfiction, I think it is a different situation. Your expertise or the information or transformation that you're providing is more important. But if you have lapsed from blogging, then don't automatically feel that it's game over and that your author career is about to die because of it. That's an article I wrote. That bit.ly link should take you there. 8 things to do if you don't want to blog or you've run out of steam with blogging. Technology. All right, yeah. So at least 1 or 2 of you, Ellen and others, said that technology is a worry for you. If you're good with tech, this might seem pretty obvious, but if you're not, then a bit of good news with technology, it is getting easier. And this is my real, I was going to say the 5-year-old's guide, but 5-year-olds are now really good with technology. So let's call this my grandmother's guide for the absolute essential bits of a website. You need some space on a computer somewhere where your website will live. You need some clever stuff. You see how techie and jargon filled this presentation is. You need some clever stuff that actually makes the website work. You need some words and pictures that go on there. And although you can get away without a domain name, you could use a free domain name, it's a very small cost. So I recommend you have your own domain name. So you might hear the space called hosting. You'll hear this clever stuff called everything from technology to platform, even CMS, which is content management system, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry about it. Just know that it's the clever stuff. Words, images, and book covers, those are more obvious. And then the domain name, that's the part that used to always have the www in front of it. And it's now increasingly common for these first 2 components to get bundled up and sold to you as one subscription. So if you're using something like WordPress for your website, you might well still have this happening separately. But for services like Wix and Weebly and Squarespace and others, you might well just pay one price to have this happen. The bad news is with technology that although we have more choices than ever, prices really are coming down and it's much easier to make it look beautiful. It can still feel overwhelming. And yeah, it's still pretty easy if you don't know what you're doing to come up with a really amateurish looking website. So what do we do about that? My opinion of the secret sauce is keep it really, really, really simple. So I've already said you don't need very many pages, especially if you're just getting going, that is the case. But even if you're well established, then the more stuff that you can prune out or curate, the better your results will be. A really simple website, it's faster for you to put together and to maintain. If you're hiring help with it, it's going to be cheaper for the person that's helping you. It's much easier, of course. You can spend more time either doing the work that you love or writing the books that you love. And in fact, it looks better. When you pare it right back, your work looks a lot more intentional. I don't think this evening I want to dig deep into making technology choices. Most of you have got a website. If you haven't, or if you're curious in any case, yeah, this bit.ly link is Website Starter Kit. You can also find this actually by just going to my website and clicking on free. Thank you very much for Jennifer, for sharing the bit.ly stop blogging. So I'll leave this one up for a moment. bit.ly Website Starter Kit. But equally, you know, if you go to my website, the pop-up will grab you and it will offer you this. And this guides you through some decisions on knowing yourself and knowing what you need, so that you can start to narrow down some of those tech choices. However, the too long didn't read version of the technology platforms that I now recommend. If you want something that's pretty easy to use, but very professional, looks great, I do almost all of my custom design work now on Squarespace. If you're good with technology, or you have a sister or a nephew or somebody who will help you with it, and you don't mind keeping it up to date, so Chris said keeping up with security, that kind of thing, yeah, updating your plugins, taking backups, all that stuff, then WordPress is undeniably very, very powerful. Or if you do identify as the starving artist and you really want to save money on your website, then for the price of a really great sandwich and a good cup of coffee, then you can get going on a tool that I actually quite like called Carrd.co. It is spelt with 2 R's, so Carrd.co. This is a very, very simple web platform. It's not got the heavy lifting of the others, but I honestly think if you really don't want to put the time or money into a more extensive or a more adaptable website, you can get going on Carrd.co, and I will be cheering you on with that. All right, and just to say, don't give up all hope if you think you've chosen the wrong thing. If you're on WordPress and you hate it, or you just don't understand the plugins, the widgets, the themes, all that stuff, it is certainly not impossible to migrate. I have quite a few clients who come to me and I move them from WordPress to Squarespace. So that's always an option for you. You're not stuck. Good. Okay. So before you leave here this evening, I want you to make one key decision for your website. This is possibly the thing that will get you the best results the fastest from any updates that you choose to make from our time tonight. On every single page of your website, what is it that you want the website visitor to do next? You need to get really clear on that, because until you're clear on it, you won't design and specify your website so that your website is clear, and therefore the visitor won't know what to do either. Now, what are some examples then of a call to action? So this is marketing speak, CTA, call to action. Lots of authors say to me, well, obviously, I want the visitor to buy my book. Okay. You might, however, be more interested in getting your message out there and inspiring people and building a community and encouraging others. That might be your primary goal from your website. Maybe you have a business where you also do speaking engagements. Your book is kind of your calling card, and in fact, it's the speaking gigs that bring in the money for you. So that might be your call to action. And down at the bottom, the little star I've put here is, Don't forget, and if in doubt, it's always a really good idea to invite your website visitor to give you their email address so that you have permission to stay in touch. Now, email marketing for authors is a whole other topic, but sometimes I want my authors to remember that, okay, selling a book today is great, but how much more valuable is it if you get somebody's email address and therefore you have permission to market to them and to sell them your next 5 or 10 or 20 books? This is kind of where an author business is built. So examples from my clients. This is Connie. She wrote a memoir and she decided she wanted her call to action to be buy the book. So these buttons here that you probably can't see, these are leading directly to book retailers. Pauline, she's a writer. She knows a lot about Shakespeare. And she wanted her main call to action to be to join her email list so that she then has permission to stay in touch with people who might otherwise come to the website once and not come back. Pamela, sadly, Pamela passed away, but she was a fascinating woman who was around in the early days of artificial intelligence. One of very few women in that field. And so she was a popular and much in demand speaker. And so we set up her website so that her call to action was invite Pamela to be a speaker. So there are some examples from the field. Why do I care? Yeah, I don't want you to be in this 70%. Don't make the mistake of having somebody come to your website and then them not being sure what you want them to do next. So that means it's your turn. According to your goals for your business, what are you going to focus on as the main thing that you want a website visitor to do? I will look to the chat here. Does it have to be the same call to action on every page? Scott is asking. No, I think it's really good to get clear from your website what's the ideal thing you want people to do. But it is natural on different pages. You might choose to prioritize a different next step. Yeah. Okay, so Polly's saying that a great outcome from visiting your website is when they buy the book. Super. Join the newsletter, join the email list on your main page. Joan, yep, thank you. Lauren, you're building a community on social media, so you want follows there. Chris, yeah, so your main call to action, buy the book, but otherwise you've got some mentoring going on. Very good. Yeah, join the email list, buy the book. Okay, super. Yeah, these are absolutely in line with what I would expect from a group like we have tonight. Okay, Nancy, yep, so when people join your email list, there's a free chapter in it for them. Yeah, lovely. Okay, great. So what you then keep in mind is as you are actually constructing or arranging the content on each page, is it jumping off the screen at the visitor what you want them to do next? So in other words, don't have a dozen different things they could do. Try to prioritize, and we'll talk in a moment about the visuals for that. Prioritize the thing that you would really love them to do, or your secondary choice, that's fine as well. Wonderful. All right, thank you. So how do we design the website to get those results, to look credible, and to give the visitor the really strong impression that your work is good as well? I'm pausing. I wasn't sure if I heard a question or a cough like mine. Okay, good. So design, some top tips for you. If you have design skills, so I know we have at least somebody in the meeting who does, I think it was book design. If you're a designer by profession, feel free, ignore these rules. If you're not, then here are some ways that you can cheat and greatly increase the chances that your website is going to look good. Yeah, and if you don't get this right, then 94% of your visitors may have concerns about you. All right, so gone are the days when your website background needed to be some busy thing. You crammed all your main content in the middle, and around the outside you had some scenery or texture or background going on. These days, websites are dramatically more simple, and you really want to keep the focus on your work and your words instead of any kind of attractive background. Somebody mentioned clutter when we checked in with each other earlier. Yeah, so clutter undermines your credibility, it undermines your professionalism, and it will tend to disguise what you really want that call to action to be. Examples on websites. So any of you that still have a sidebar on your website, that is an area where you're almost, you're very, very likely to fall into the trap of having some clutter. Many of the WordPress sites that you got started with had some built-in clutter there for you, and it's certainly a place where other outdated bits and pieces live. But I also see clutter in your website menu, I see it in the footer, I see it on your bio page, I see it in your blog posts, it gets everywhere. So do have a look and see whether you can cut any extraneous information. Oh, this is Orna Ross from the Alliance of Independent Authors. I love her to bits, and she put it very nicely. A lot of websites are absolutely coming down with junk. People just don't know what to do. So yeah, too much junk, and your audience will not take the action that you want them to take. Web design these days, much bigger text sizes and fewer words. I think this is directly linked to the number of your visitors who will use a phone, but I think it also speaks to attention spans. If you've ever spent any time on Twitter, and that's a whole other debate, hopefully you've had some practice at making your points succinctly and deciding what your big message is. Again, if you're a designer, you can skip this, but for the rest of us, you don't need to use more than one typeface or font on your website, and two will be completely fine. I'm a big fan of pairing a very plain font, a sans serif font, with either a serif or a script font. Now, if you're familiar with these terms, that's great. If not, just think of it that script is super fancy. It's what you get on something like a wedding invitation or a historical romance. A serif font has slight little bits of decoration and embellishment at the end of the letters. And the sans serif is very plain. It's great for reading on the screen, especially for a whole paragraph. These other two, use them more sparingly. A nice place to start maybe is a serif font for your headings, and then a sans serif for anything that's more than a line or so that you want your visitor to be able to read. If you pair two of these together, you'll be off to a good start. Similarly, you don't need more than about 2 accent colors on your website. So you'll have a background color, you want a text color that shows up really clearly against that background, and then allow yourself 1 or 2 accent colors. And these are the colors you use to draw the website visitor's eye in the direction of the action you want them to take. So in other words, these are your button colors and the things that you really want to stand out. Images, yeah. So one of the things that I believe really lets down your website faster than anything else is when your images suck. So either that means they're small, they're grainy, you took them on your phone and didn't know how to edit them, or you just haven't considered what appropriate photos and images are for your website and for your work. So one thing we see very often is an author photo or a photo of you that isn't up to par. My encouragement here, if you're not a supermodel, that's okay. Yes, it's lovely if you can have a professional headshot taken, but even if you can't, there are ways of getting a good friend on side and at least coming up with a photo that's halfway decent. So let's try and banish the ones where it's a photo of you taken at your cousin's wedding, and half your shoulder's missing because you had to crop out one of the bridesmaids. You can do better than that, I know. Oh, this is my client, Kiana. She invested in a little bit of light photoshopping to get a really nice kind of moody scene going on here that sets the scene very nicely for her genre of writing. But even without that, if you don't have a lot of photos that need to go on your website, hopefully you have one or more really strong book covers. The only reason I'm showing you my book covers is not to plug the book, but to point out the difference between the flat cover image that we see when we're shopping online on the online book sellers, and images that actually look like paperback books. Obviously, you would only do this if your book is available as a physical book, but you can make these images for free. Here's another bit.ly link, best website tools, best-website-tools. That leads you to a page on my site where I link to one or two of my favorite ways of making these images. And it's super fun, and I really wish more authors did it, because it helps a lot to guide your reader. And in fact, Nancy, you said you have a lead magnet on your website for joining your email newsletter. You can also, I mean, maybe don't make it look like a whole book, but you can also do some really fun things with mock-up images to make your courses or your lead magnets or your other free resources really jump off the page. So images. Oh, okay, yeah. Here's a website I did where we put the book into a lifestyle scene. Again, this is a mock-up. We didn't have an actual photo shoot in the author's living room. This is a mock-up of her book, such that it can then take a really nice starring role on the website. Good. Oh, all right. Tip number 7. Empty space. Don't be afraid to leave. It's the equivalent of a pause in the conversation. Leave some empty space on your website. Nothing wrong with that. And in fact, these days, everything will look higher end, more intentional. You'll look a lot more confident. And hopefully the other design folk on this call will agree that empty space really is a powerful thing, no matter what you're designing. And then, yeah, somebody said earlier on in the chat, I won't scroll back looking for it, but you're worried about how your website looks on mobile, on a phone. Yeah, even if you've got good data and you know that a chunk of your visitors do visit your website on a big screen, if you design or keep in mind that plenty of people will be standing in line at the store, they'll come to you on a phone, then you'll do yourself a really good service. Obviously, it's great for your website visitor if they can pull out their phone and find your website. But if you are trying to get Google's attention, then looking good on mobile is a prerequisite for impressing Google as well. Good. Okay, so I think those are my 8 tips. Yeah, that one looked good on mobile. Yeah, so again, the too long didn't read version of all this stuff. Cut back on your content. If you love your book covers, and I hope you do, then really let them be the star of the show. Lots of authors can get away with really having their books do the heavy lifting in terms of the design of your website. All right, so I've gone quite fast. I think we're doing well for time. I want to leave lots of time for discussion. That's why I'm zipping through these. Let's talk about what you can do with budget considerations. So I already said, if you're on a super tight budget, you can choose a website tool that caters for that. Card.co, I'll put it in the chat again in case anyone needs it. That is the best tool I've found for building a very simple website. I think their professional plan these days is $19 US a year. That was 19. It is a very simple site though, so don't think that you're going to be able to build your empire off of that, but it's a really nice option if you've got severe budget constraints. I already said you can get a load of free advice from me by basically joining my email list. There's the website starter kit that you're welcome to grab. And then I have dozens, if not approaching hundreds now, of articles and guides on my website to try to give you the best possible start that I can without you having to spend any money. Some of my favorites, we've talked about things to do instead of blogging. Up here, I've got a guide on what you should ask a website designer if you do decide to hire somebody like me to help you. And this 45-step checklist down here, this is one of my most popular pages. It's now a 50-step checklist. I realized there were some things I hadn't included there. So lots of goodies there for you. Most of them you can access without even joining my email list. If you do join my email list and you later decide it's not for you, no worries, just unsubscribe. I don't even look at that. If you want the help from somebody like me to build your website for you, then to give you an idea of budget, my packages start at $3,300. That is a done-for-you Squarespace website where you basically give me your material, your books, and your book covers, and you give me all your angst, and I make your worries go away. Another option that is very popular, though, if you're on more of a budget, I offer what are known as premium website templates. These use Squarespace. I've basically built a simple author website for you, and I then transfer that website to you, and you start customizing it and changing out the content and making it your own. So that is the do-it-yourself option that I encourage. Or, of course, you can start with any of those other tools and make your own journey that way. Yeah, obviously, I passionately believe that you need a website. It's the mission control of all of the marketing that you do. Sooner or later, a reader is going to check you out. And I really want you to put your best foot forward in whatever way makes sense for you. Okay, so there's me again. Very happy to hear from you, but I'm hoping that we now have lots of time for any discussion or questions or even hot seat coaching that you would like to take advantage of. All righty, so let me stop sharing and then I can arrange my windows and hopefully see you again. And maybe, Jennifer, you would like to take the spotlight off me. And I'm very happy to discuss. Yeah.
I'll jump in here. This is Paul.
Hi, Paul.
So there was a little bit of chat going on, but I think no real pending questions in the meeting chat. So I'd like to encourage anybody now that has a question for Pauline. If you want, you can put it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and just speak up.
Yeah, I wanted to say something. This is another option which probably is not available to a lot of people, but it is available to me. I know how to build a website from scratch. I know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And for many years, before I knew CSS and JavaScript, I knew a little HTML. I was building websites with WordPress. The problem with doing WordPress, and I've also researched other CMS, content management systems, website builders, things like that, is that I could never find a theme that I was completely happy with. So once I learned HTML and CSS, I could build my own website and have it exactly the way I wanted it and be able to modify it exactly the way I wanted it. But as I said, it's not an option available to most people because most people don't have the training to do that and don't have the time or the energy to take classes to do that. If you you can hire website designers who will build a website with HTML and CSS, and you pretty much dictate the way that you want it built. However, hiring someone like me to do that tends to be a bit expensive. But you won't be able to modify it yourself. If you have Squarespace, if you have WordPress, you can modify it yourself because that's pretty accessible to most people. And there's tons of instruction manuals online, which are free, and videos, instruction videos, which are free online for WordPress and other systems like that. I just wanted to mention it as another option so that if you have the funds and you want a website that's exact, you can hire someone like me to build a website with HTML and CSS, and then you will have to also put them on retainer to modify the website. I have one client who is that way. She knows absolutely nothing about websites, is happy for me to do that, pays me a monthly fee in order to keep her website up, and that's fine. But not a lot of people want to do that. But I just want to throw that out as another option that you can do if you're so inclined.
Yeah, thank you, Joan. So that's the completely custom option. As you say, there's a trade-off there between specifying exactly what you want and some of the implications of that for budget and who you work with. Yeah.
Hey, Joan, can you say a little bit about what you could do if you are able to work at the level you're talking about versus using one of the more simple site building programs which make it easier for most people? What was it that disappointed you and forced you to and encouraged you to go to this to really do it all yourself? What was missing?
Well, as I said, I searched literally throughout the years, literally hundreds of WordPress themes, and none of them had exactly the look that I wanted. I did get a WordPress website. I found a WordPress theme that had something the way that I wanted to do, that displayed the cover of the books in a row, sort of like a bookcase with the titles, with the cover face out. Except that the person who designed that particular theme stopped supporting it. And so one day I went to my website and found it was completely blank. So I decided if I wanted the exact look that I wanted, I really, really needed to do it myself. Does that answer your question, Ron,
yeah, partially. There's clearly you can do more. I'm just every so often I've wanted to do something special, and I've had to what I usually do is go back to the company and say, do this for me, and I get away with that.
Yeah, I would say the more immersed we are in the industry, and Joan, it sounds like you have deep experience in this kind of thing. The more immersed we are in it, I think the more choosy we get about what we really want the website to do and look like and how it should behave, possibly beyond the level that most authors would ever think about. It's almost like, what kind of home would an architect build for themselves versus what kind of home would I be happy living in?
So Michael had asked a question in the chat. Have you thought about, Pauline, offering WordPress templates?
Yeah, okay, Michael. So I do not work on WordPress for clients. I was on WordPress myself many years ago. I made the decision when I started to design for clients that I had enough concerns about the WordPress ecosystem that I didn't want to be on vacation when something broke and all my clients emailed me on the same day needing something fixed. So I, in fact, for clients, work only on platforms where it's an all-in-one solution and there's a help team that, if necessary, my client can go directly to 24/7. And that's why I made the switch to Squarespace. It's kind of like getting your car serviced. Until pretty recently, we could be confident if we walked into any car servicing garage or dealership that they could handle it. And then electric cars came along, and you really can't take your Tesla into another type of dealership and expect to get servicing. So you can think of it in those terms, that generally speaking, the people who are expert in WordPress will not be expert in Squarespace, and vice versa. Except for Joan, who can get right under the hood of almost anything.
So another
I have
question.
a question about mailing lists. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Carrie.
Oh, I had a question about mailing lists, and I don't, would go from the very sophisticated to not. I have a mailing list, and I use a Gmail coordinated program just to do the, invisible sending and all of that. And it works quite well, but I don't have any means of auto-populating from my website. I'm still manually adding people. For programs to do that, or for a more seamless delivery, what do you recommend?
Yeah, so Carrie, when you say you have a mailing list, do you have the type of service where at the bottom of everything you send out, there's a link that people can use to unsubscribe, and that's taken care of automatically?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm still using a marketing GMass mailing list back from when I was doing a different kind of marketing. So I really don't have mailing list software yet. And I guess that's what I'm asking about.
Yeah. Okay. So I warmly encourage you to start thinking about transitioning to that. The legislation these days for sending out mass emails for marketing purposes is you do have to meet certain requirements. And one of those requirements is that you are basically using a service provider so that there's a link at the bottom of everything so people can unsubscribe. If you really want to keep yourself awake at night, go and look up the CAN Spam Act. So yeah, there are lots of tools out there that will look after the mailing list for you. They'll help you comply with the legislation, and you then link those tools up with your website so that somebody can go to your website, put their name in a box, and they get onto your mailing list. In brief, if you have nothing and you're just getting started, then yes, Scott has put some suggestions in the chat. My favorite option for free is MailerLite. I've written a couple.
Can you say that again?
MailerLite. So
MailerLite.
if you check out the chat, about 2 comments ago, Scott said MailChimp, MailerLite. MailerLite seems to beat all the others hands down if you compare what you get on the free plan. Now, you won't necessarily find that MailerLite will be your best friend in email marketing forever. When you get up to 100,000 readers on your list and you're bringing in the big bucks, MailerLite may not be able to do that heavy lifting for you. I personally use ConvertKit. I like that a lot. But other authors are using things like Flowdesk and Aweber, and I rarely come across anyone who is severely unhappy with their service, except the folks who are floundering around with MailChimp.
I've heard that too.
MailChimp is very popular. It's where I started, but it is kind of confusing. And I think if you are just getting going, then MailerLite is probably the first one to look at. Ellen, you've asked, can I put these other names in the chat? Yes. Why isn't my keyboard working?
I'll add while you're getting your keyboard working there. So I've used MailChimp on a lot of things, and I know they're now going into that mode of really restricting the free platform quite a bit. So they're in full monetization mode now, whereas a year or two back and prior to that, they were very welcoming, and I think that's changing now. So, and that's it's one of those things that changes.
Yeah, so I use ConvertKit. I like it a lot. I used to think it was reasonably expensive for what I got, until the day that I spent a whole morning researching the others and decided that actually ConvertKit was good. But for my clients who have nothing and I mean, let's face it, we've all got bills to pay. You can't necessarily be paying out for everything all at once. MailerLite on the free plan is extremely impressive features. So take a look there if you've got nothing.
Okay.
And
Thank
to
you very
sort of-
much.
Yeah, and to kind of complete the question, what you do is you go to MailerLite, you sign up, you make yourself a little form for people to join. A MailerLite will then show you a piece of code that you copy and paste across to your website, wherever you want the opportunity to show up to join your list.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yay, okay.
And I'll add for your benefit there, Squarespace or WordPress or any of the managed sites give you a way of plugging that code in. They'll do it a little differently, but there's always a way to do it. So.
Yes, there is.
So there was a question a little bit earlier, Chris asked about, kind of speaking of costs and things toward what would be, I guess, a reasonable range of annual costs for hosting, domain name, website security, etc. And he mentions using SiteGround, but I know there is a enormous range in what you can spend for this. So what's your read on that, Pauline, as far as what should someone be expecting?
So I am wondering how quickly I can get my hands on the summary I did of this. Let me chat it through instead. So leaving aside hiring any professional help from somebody like me or from Joan to help you with it, let's say you're just looking at the tools you need. The bottom of the range that I know of is $19 a year for card. Add on to that approximately $12 a year for your website name. So I think you can get online with something that looks half decent for about $31 a year. Going up from there, if you use something like WordPress, but you need to buy hosting, I've seen hosting from anywhere from about $5 a month to $15 a month. So do the math there, but say kind of $100 to $200 a year for your hosting. And then you're getting more into the territory of the services, which are a little bit more expensive, but they give you a bit more in terms of help. There's probably a chat line that you can get help from, that kind of thing. Squarespace, for example, you're looking somewhere in the region of $200 to $300 a year to have your website with Squarespace. Yeah, I think that's a fair summary of the cost. So yeah, the cost of doing business. If budget really is a concern to you, then you can, if you are willing to invest some time learning, then you can certainly find some ways to economize. And doing something very simple, I think, is always better than not having a site at all.
Yeah, I was going to reiterate that, because one of the problems with ranges of costs is if you're looking at a platform that supports, e-commerce and shopping cart and all sorts of authentication issues, well, those do cost more because there's a lot more services. And if you don't need those services, don't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of chat about authors selling directly from their websites, that kind of thing. I mean, I would say don't run before you can walk. Having just a simple page up there where people can find you and ideally sign up for your email list, that will serve you very well. Okay, I found my article. For anyone who really wants to dig into the cost angle, that hopefully gives you some more ideas of what to look out for.
thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Chris asked, is it easy to switch from MailChimp to MailerLite?
If all you're really bringing with you is a list of email addresses from MailChimp, then yes, you export everybody from MailChimp according to their email address, and you import them to MailerLite. When I migrated from MailChimp to ConvertKit. The things that I was looking out for was I wanted to hang on to some kind of history as to how engaged that subscriber had been during during my time on MailChimp. And by engaged, I mean, roughly speaking, were they opening my emails? Were they clicking on things? So I chose to try to export everybody with their MailChimp engagement score. And then the other thing that you might or might not be dealing with, if you have any automated welcome messages set up that go out to people who join your email list, then I, for one, was completely paranoid that when I picked everybody up and moved them to the new home, I didn't want to trigger all those automatic welcomes again. Now, there's no particular reason why it should trigger, but I would say it's easy to move if your email list is very simple and you don't have a lot of groups or segments or tagging or sequences. If you feel you do have a complicated email situation already, then Chris, it's probably worth just chatting it through with an email marketing Sherpa to help you with that change.
It's a good way to describe it, yes.
I mean, one thing I would say about the tech world we're living in, and I mean, bless them, they are making it reasonably easy for people without PhDs to do this kind of thing. But most of the tools will tell you it's very, very easy to abandon where you are and join them instead. And I think taking that kind of thing with a pinch of salt is a good idea.
They're referring to the billing part. It's very easy for us to start charging you money. The rest, yeah, that's kind of up to you.
I love that. Yeah, great way of putting it.